everyone. I'm Mary Stegmeir from NACAC's communications team, coming at you live from our headquarters in Arlington, Virginia. Today we'll be talking about nudges, norms, and new solutions, a free resource aimed at helping more students access college, stay on track academically, and navigate the financial aid process. In just a couple of minutes, we'll have Ben Castleman join our chat. You may recognize his name. Ben is an assistant professor of education and public policy at the University of Virginia, and he's done a lot of thinking about what it takes for students to earn a degree. He has worked with the Obama White House to create Up Next, a mobile messaging campaign aimed at boosting college access, and in April he joined us for NACAC Reads Twitter chat about one of his books, The 160 Character Solution. He is also one of the brains behind this new guide, so welcome, Ben. And he's going to be joining us shortly. He is joining us from his offices at the University of Virginia. So if you can just hold on with us. In the meantime, if you have any questions about the guide, any questions for Ben about nudges, let us know. You can just add your name in the comment section and let us know what you'd like to ask Ben, and we'll get to those questions a little later in the hour. Any Ben yet?
He's having a little, it's not seeing it.
Thanks for sticking with us. And again, if you're watching live, just let us know your name and where you're watching from in the comment section.
Charlie says hi. Say hi to Charlie.
It looks like Ben is on the NACAC page and he likes it, but he doesn't see the live link yet.
Yeah. I told him to refresh.
So if you guys can just hang with us, we'll get Ben on as soon as possible. In the meantime, Ben will tell us a little bit about this guide, but this is what we'll be talking about today. It came out a few months ago. Nudges, Norms, and New Solutions. It's a free download. You can get the PDF version for free. And it offers trying to make sure that students can access college through the financial aid process. And Ben is with us, I hear. Okay, excellent. Welcome, Ben.
Hi, great to be with you.
Excellent. Well, for everyone out there who may just be joining us, if you tell us hi in the comments and let us know where you're tuning in from, that would be great. And if you have questions, put them in there as well. In the meantime, Ben, we have plenty of questions for you. So we've all heard about nudges in recent years. Can you start out by telling us exactly what they are and how they can be used to help more students get to and through college?
Sure, happy to. Thanks again for the chance to be with you all today. And thanks to everyone who's joined. I'd love to answer any questions you have. I think the easiest way to think about a nudge is as a hopefully fairly simple and straightforward change to a decision-making process that makes it easier for students to follow through on their own intentions around going to college or to make informed decisions about what options they pursue that really best align with their post-secondary goals and aspirations. So to give you two concrete examples of what a nudge could be, imagine if we changed the way that students had to renew their financial aid. So instead of refiling the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA, every single year students were in college, effectively, instead of students having to opt in to maintain financial aid that they qualified for at the end of high school, students were by default had their financial aid renewed unless they indicated that they weren't in college or unless the tax system indicated that they were no longer eligible. So that's a change to a decision-making process, right? The default would then be students are automatically renewed for financial aid, which hopefully would result in more students receiving it. And that simple change to kind of the decision-making process around how to pay for college could lead to many more students in staying in college, hopefully.
Right, because we hear so many stories about students who, in their second year of college, their third year of college, don't do the paperwork and lose the funding that they need to continue their education.
Exactly. We have some work with my colleague Kelly Bird at UVA showing that even among, so freshmen across the country, even among students with a 3.0 GPA and a Pell Grant in their first year, 15 to 20% of those students don't refile FAFSA. And as you can imagine, not refiling FAFSA makes it much less likely students will stay in college or graduate. So if we could get the Department of Education to simply change the default so students who qualified in their first year are automatically renewed, subject to their financial eligibility staying the same, that would probably support many more low-income students to stay in school.
So a lot of times nudges can be sort of reframing the question or reframing the way that we get information or prompt students for information. I'm wondering if you could tell us more about what is in the guide that you have for educators.
Sure. So the reason we put together this guide, Nudges, Norms, and New Solutions, and I should say this was put together with colleagues of mine at the Nudge 4 Solutions Lab at UVA, but also in very close partnership with colleagues at Ideas 42, a New York-based behavioral design firm. The reason we put together is that there's, over the last few years, been really a ton of strong research on nudge strategies to help students go to college or once they're there succeed. But as researchers and designers, we're very aware of the kind of behavioral problem that just because research is happening and we're finding positive impacts doesn't mean that it's making its way into the hands of admissions officers or school counselors or college retention specialists, who we know are very busy and really focused on the day-to-day work of working with students, as they should be. And so we wanted to put together a guide that would translate a lot of the evidence-based research and provide educators with really concrete strategies they could apply that are based on evidence that they can trust and rely on, that these nudge strategies, there's a good chance they would lead to positive outcomes for their students. And that's what's in the guide, a set of concrete nudge strategies that educators can use at the high school or college level to help students to and through.
And for people who are following along at home, Ben, can you tell us the webpage where you can download the guide?
Sure. So it's Nudge4, the word nudge followed by the number 4, .ideas42, the word ideas and the number 42.org. So nudge4.ideas42.org.
Okay, and if anyone needs that, it's also in the comments below the video, so check that out. And remember, if you have any questions for Ben, you can also leave them in the comment section and we'll answer them in just a couple of minutes. One thing that is pretty cool about this guide is that it is not just a guide. There's some help on the other end of the phone. So Ben, you also have started a hotline to go along with this guide. Can you tell us exactly how that works?
Sure. So one thing to emphasize is that both the guide and the hotline, which I'll describe in a minute, are completely free to use for educators. That's thanks to very generous support from the Heckscher Foundation for Children in New York. Again, the hotline, we're aware that even if people read the guide and find a strategy, let's say there's someone who's working with seniors around applications or around financial aid and finds a strategy in the guide to help more of their students, say, complete the FAFSA. We're very aware that even with the concrete kind of action-oriented guidance that's in Nudges, Norms, and New Solutions, that some educators might still feel like they need some extra support or guidance in order to be able to really put that strategy into action in their school with their students. And that's where we hope the hotline comes in. So the hotline is staffed by behavioral designers at Nudge 4 and at Ideas 42. And there are lots of different ways folks can reach out. All of the means of contacting the hotline are on the website, nudge4.ideas42.org. So people can fill out a really quick web form. People can email us, text us, call us. And we'll either pick up when you reach out or we'll get back to you really fast. And one of our designers will work through, hopefully over the series of several conversations, what we think of as a kind of behavioral diagnosis and design process, where we first and foremost try to understand what are the kind of outcomes educators are trying to support students to achieve, where there might be behavioral obstacles we can diagnose in partnership with the educators that might prevent more students from achieving that outcome, and then where we can work together to design solutions, leveraging the strategies in the guide that overcome those behavioral obstacles and support more students to make it to college or stay in college once they're there.
That's great. I think what might help at this point is if we talk about an example, something from the guide.
Sure.
And when I was looking through it, one of the things that stuck out was, so you address summer melts. That's something that is on everyone's mind right now. It's summertime. We've had, counselors have seen some of their students walk through graduation, have that proud moment. They've seen them look through their acceptance letters. Many students have deposited. And yet we know that every year, not every student who has been accepted into college ends up enrolling in the fall. And I'm wondering if you can take us through maybe one of the ways that the guide addresses that issue.
Sure. Yeah, and I will say I feel a great deal of kind of personal resonance and connection to anyone who's watching or who might watch after, who is working in a high school or a community organization and has had the experience of students walking across the stage and not enrolling. Prior to going to grad school and becoming a professor, I was a teacher and an administrator at a high poverty school in Rhode Island. And I had that experience year over year with my own seniors, right? Students who had all the kind of talent and promise in the world and had done everything they were supposed to get into college, to figure out financial aid, make it to graduation where they thought they'd enroll. And then these kind of financial and procedural tasks came up over the summer that students didn't know how to complete. And we weren't, unfortunately, around over the summer to support them. And so I'll give you two examples of summer melt strategies that we talk about in the guide. One is a kind of very human-centered strategy. And we profile a peer mentor approach where during the summer, schools could have alumni who had successfully navigated the summer hurdles and gone to college and been successful, reach out to recent graduates to offer the kind of firsthand perspective, encouragement, and guidance around how to get through the summer and transition to college and provide their own reassurance and perspective on how the summer can be challenging, and even maybe the initial transition to college can be challenging, but that for most students over time, they will build a sense of community. And so we profile peer mentor outreach as, in a broad sense, a kind of behavioral strategy to overcome the kind of belonging anxiety students might have about going to college. So that's one strategy we profile. Another strategy we profile is more of a kind of technological approach. Work that my colleague Lindsay Page and I have done over a number of years, where schools or community organizations or even colleges can use automated text messaging as a way of providing students with personalized information about tasks they have to complete in order to successfully enroll in college. And as I mentioned before, we try to focus in the guide on strategies that not only hopefully have a compelling design, but more than that, have a real evidence base to suggest that they lead to better outcomes for students. And so we describe both the evidence around peer mentor outreach, the evidence around text messaging outreach, or for that matter, counselor outreach, all of which research has found can lead to substantially higher rates of students enrolling in the summer. So that's a few examples of very timely summer melt nudge strategies that folks can find in the guide.
That's great. Well, I just want to check in to see if we have any questions that we should go to from our viewers. If not, when you think big picture, Ben, what do you hope that this guide can really give educators, can give our school counselors or our admission counselors? What tools do you hope that this gives them?
Yeah, I mean, my hope is that, so I think that there's been a real growth in the use of nudge strategies by researchers, certainly, to some extent by policymakers, maybe even by kind of education leaders at a higher level. My hope is that the many thousands of educators across the country who work directly with students, whether again as a school counselor or a college admissions officer or a financial aid administrator, view this guide as providing an additional tool in their kind of arsenal, so to speak, for supporting their students that's within their budget and within their capacity to implement. So, one of the advantages of a lot of nudge strategies is that they are comparatively much lower cost than other, means of supporting students. So, of course, I think most of us on this Facebook Live would love to extend, particularly low-income students, more need-based grant assistance to pay for college. We should continue to work towards that, but that requires kind of systemic long-term change. Nudge strategies are by no means a substitute for grant assistance, but they can be a useful supplement to existing supports. And so they're not expensive typically for educators to implement. And our hope is that the guide and the hotline combined could provide educators, an individual counselor in an individual school with the support that they need to implement one of these strategies and see that many more of their students to go to college. So there's a lot that comes out of academics or think tanks that are kind of really high-level abstract thought pieces where when I was a teacher or administrator, I wouldn't have known anything to do with that. And we tried to make our core audience is educators who work directly with students, and our core purpose is to provide as action-oriented strategies as possible that those same educators can put into practice.
Yeah. I think we have a question from online. Oh, we just wanted a comment. Angelica just downloaded the guide, and she can't wait to share it with her district. So thank you, Angelica.
Thank you. That's great to hear. I hope it's useful.
Ben, we talked a lot about financial aid and how nudges can be so helpful in that process. We talked about summer melts. I'm wondering if you can maybe touch on some of the strategies or the potential for just building college awareness, getting it on kids' radar, changing their expectations about where they can go. Can these nudges and new solutions really help kids that are just starting that college journey?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. To be honest, I don't know that, I don't think we feature as many of those strategies in the guide, evidence-based strategies around strengthening expectations, not because we don't think they're important, just because I think the comparative evidence base is more around strategies to support students who are further along to apply, get financial aid. But I think there's a lot that we could potentially do. One thing we do talk about in the guide is ways we can make it easier for students to take college entrance exams. So two concrete examples of that. Numerous states, as most of the kind of viewers probably know, have changed their test-taking policies. So instead of the SAT or the ACT being a college entrance exam one has to volunteer to take and pay to take, that those same tests are now offered to every junior in the state. And that's, again, a really interesting change in a policy default where now these college entrance exams are not something one has to volunteer and pay for. And by virtue of that, if you come to school in a state like Illinois or Kentucky or Maine on the day that the ACT or the SAT is administered, even if you're from a kind of lower income first generation background, you're going to take that exam. And if you hopefully you do decently. And as a function of that, you're going to get information you might not have had about your potential to be successful in college. And you're probably also going to get a bunch of colleges reaching out, eager to connect with you. So that's an example of a kind of policy level change. But what we also talk about is ways that we can make it easier for students to take the SAT. So George Bowman has done some great research showing that students are more likely to take the SAT, not surprisingly, if they have a test-taking site near them. And so, I think one of the kind of catchphrases to think about what we were trying to do with nudges is we're trying to make things easy that might otherwise be hard. And so if educators could work with their district leaders or with SAT or ACT to create additional testing centers, to make testing happen during the school day, even if they're in a SAT, ACT optional state, optional in the sense that the state has not done kind of universal entrance exam testing, more students are likely to participate. Probably a more a little bit more of a radical idea would be, especially for our open enrollment and our broad access colleges and universities, to default enroll students to college. So especially open enrollment institutions, if every student who applies gets in, conceivably you could imagine a college sending freshmen in high school an acceptance letter that says, we're so excited to admit you to whatever the college is, and here are the things that we really encourage you to do during high school to be ready to come to our college or another college that you decide is a good fit for you. So again, it's a change to a default where now the status quo is not for a student, I'm not going to go to college because people in my family, in my neighborhood, in my community haven't gone to college. The status quo starting in high school is now, I got an acceptance letter, and here are the things that I need to do to kind of make that happen. So I think that's, you know, another potential strategy that we could use that shifts students' expectations. I'd love to hear from folks on the Facebook Live, you know, if there are other strategies they have found really useful to kind of build expectations around college going.
Yeah, that is great. If anyone has ideas, put them in the comment section. And again, everyone, we're talking about nudges, norms, and new solutions. We encourage you to download the guide. It's really helpful. It's free. And if you have questions, there's also a free hotline that you can call. I think that's probably about it, the time that we have for today. But Ben, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you to everyone who tuned in. This is great.
Great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate the chance to do this.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Bye.
Bye.